What is going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Lions Pulse. I am Miko, and I'm back once again. I know it's been a little while since I last did a live stream. I've been crazy busy. Obviously, like you guys know from the last live stream that I did, I've been doing a ton of content over at Pride of Detroit. But I wanted to take out some time, do a live stream, kind of get back in the flow of it, and really instead of just kind of focusing in on last week's game, like I said, it's Wednesday at this point. We should be on from the Chiefs and on to Seattle. And that's kind of what I wanted to do in today's video is focus specifically on the Seattle Seahawks and talk about exactly some of the things that I think Lions fans should kind of be, kind of have their mind and an eye on as we head into this matchup against the Seattle Seahawks this week. I actually will have a video coming out later today, possibly tonight, over on the Pride of Detroit channel, where I go into some very specific things that I think the Lions should be concerned about in regards to the Seattle Seahawks. But in today's video, I want to have a free-flowing conversation with you guys. I want to be able to know what you guys are worried about in terms of this matchup, and then as well as give you guys some of my thoughts of some of the things that where areas where I think the Lions will be strong in this matchup, and a couple of areas where I am a little concerned. But it's been a minute. I want to jump into the chat with you guys. Want to see who's here. If if you haven't seen me in a while, jump in the chat, say what's up. I'd love to be able to chop it up with everybody. And so let's go ahead and get it started with the first comment here. We have Perry in the chat saying, "Hi Miko, how are you?" Perry, I've been good, man. I honestly can't complain. Had a really good week so far. Getting back into going to the gym. I've been slacking since I got back from California. And so I'm trying to like hit that hard again. And I've been feeling good. It's been really good to be able to get back into the swing of things of being able to work out and exercise. So really, really happy about that. My guy Grit in the chat saying, "Wow, and it only took 3 weeks. I already unsubscribed." I mean, Grit, if that's how it is, I thought we were better than that. I thought we were good friends. Anyways, hopefully me being back today will at least give you a reason to resubscribe, and then we can, pick up where we left off. I don't want you to leave on bad terms. Shout out to my guy 1991 Max Stack saying, "Miko, what up, my guy?" Mac, what's good with you, man? It's super good to be back. Really excited to be able to talk Lions with you guys again in a more free-flowing way, not so structured of a video, but just being able to have free-flowing conversations. So really, really excited to be able to do that with you guys. My guy David Barnett in the chat saying, "Hi, Miko. What's going on, David? Good to see you. I'm glad you were able to make it for the stream. I know it's been a minute, but again, really, really excited to be able to hang out with you guys." And Brian Kimmel in the chat saying, "Hey, Miko, how do you feel about the Chiefs win?" Brian, I was over the moon, right? It was one of those games where I was sitting there watching it. And even after like the Lions got that last stop, I just kind of just kept sitting there like, no, something's going to happen, right? I was just in disbelief that it was actually happening. And even to the point when the Lions were taking a knee to kind of run out the clock, I was like, no, something's going to happen. And so I was in just pure disbelief. But at the end of it, like once it, was all 0-0, dude, over the moon. I mean, it's a statement win for this team, and it's a huge sign of everything that Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, Sheila, like everything that this leadership has been talking and preaching about, kind of felt like it came to fruition in that win against the Chiefs. So I'm over the moon. I'm trying my best, and that's what we're gonna try to do in this stream, right? Move on to Seattle because that's the next biggest thing. We can't kind of dwell on the success against the Chiefs, but we got to move on and focus on a really dangerous opponent if certain things aren't taken care of in the Seattle Seahawks. We have Karen in the chat over on the Twitch channel saying, "Hey, Miko, want to know, baby." Listen, appreciate you, Karen. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for holding it down over on Twitch. If anybody else is over on Twitch, please be sure to, again, comment in. Again, for those of you that don't know, I kind of run this on StreamYard and not Streamlabs, so I can't engage with Twitch as freely as I normally would, but at least I can see everybody's comments using StreamYard. So again, feel free to comment, feel free to ask questions. And let's just have a really good time in this stream. I plan on hanging out with you guys for the normal amount of time I normally do, so about an hour. And so yeah, I really do just want to kind of kick it and really enjoy ourselves tonight. David with the question saying, "Is our offense going to get back to form this week?" David, I think they have a really good chance to, and I think there's we can kind of start this conversation there, right? With the offensive side of the football and how the offense, how I believe the offense kind of matches up with Seattle's defense. And specifically looking at what came out of week one with the Seahawks matchup against the Rams, there were some really good things that the Seahawks did defensively. I'm not trying to take that away from them because I know it's easy to look at the score and see, the Rams winning 30-13 and just being like, oh, they just gave up points after points after points. No, the Rams, did struggle in a specific area with their offense, and that part of their offense was their run game. They did struggle being able to get the running game going at times. They found some timely runs here and there that helped them kind of extend drives, and especially like once it got to like the fourth quarter, and so just be able to work clock. But up until that point, the Seahawks were all over a lot of the running plays that the Rams were trying to run, and so that is something that has me concerned for the Lions in regards to if the Seahawks are, again, just as dialed in with the running game, what kind of effect that could have on the Lions offense. And could that put them in a situation where, again, you're starting to have to lean even more so on Jared Goff and you're expecting him to basically be the fuel behind your offense? Because that is what the Rams eventually had to do with Matthew Stafford is that, listen, the run game wasn't working. And so you go out there and you see Stafford put up over 300 yards and have two receivers go over 100 yards each. And that's your offense. I don't know if the Lions are built for that, but the way in which Matthew Stafford did it, I do think Jared Goff can very much do it the exact same way. The Seahawks run a lot of zone coverage. And the way that Matthew Stafford was able to beat their zone coverage, or the way the Rams were able to beat their zone coverage, was that they sent a lot of their receivers on crossing routes, on routes where their receivers had to run through zones. And when you're running a zone defense, there's pockets within that zone. And if your quarterback is, again, clean in the pocket and he's able to, hit these timely routes with his receivers, you can set up things to where your receivers, don't just run through zones, but they understand like, oh, this is a zone concept. I'm going to sit in this zone because I understand that there's no one here and I can make myself available to my quarterback. And early in that game, like some of the Rams receivers struggled with that. They had a couple younger guys obviously running these routes. And so it made it a little difficult. But you start looking at the second half, and I'm assuming whether it's Sean McVay or Matthew Stafford sitting with his wide receivers and saying, hey, this is what I need from you on these types of routes. I need you to sit on this route so that you can make yourself available. They exposed the hell out of the Seahawks. And that's how you go from that game being really close in the first half to the second half, it being more of like a blowout because they were just getting picked apart and they didn't have an answer. And it was something that's really surprising from a team in the Seahawks where for so many years, one of their best calling cards was how they covered. And I'll be honest, going into this game, I was really concerned about, their coverage skills when you have a safety like Diggs, when you have, a second year corner in Tariq Woolen. Uh, Kobe Bryant is I'm really impressed with what Kobe Bryant's doing at the nickel position. And so there's a number of guys in that secondary where you're like, man, this could be kind of tough. But you look at the scheme itself and that they run, then you start to feel like, you know what? Maybe this offense can just pick apart the scheme because there's holes in it. And it's not because it's a bad scheme. It's just that it's easier to scheme against. And with the type of quarterback and receivers that the Lions have, I have a lot of faith going back to David's original question. I know I've been kind of rambling for a minute, but going back to David's original question, I do think the offense can get back on track in that regard. And just again, being able to pick apart the Seattle, secondary in that regards. Um, so yeah, that hopefully that's a long-winded question, David, but hopefully I answered your question in that regard. Brian saying Seahawks put their right tackle Abe Lucas on IR. Left tackle is also questionable for Sunday. Look for a D line to eat this weekend. And I think that's very true. Obviously, I think the news also broke that the Seahawks did sign Jason Peters. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with their tackle situation. Jason Peters is definitely up there in age. I think he's 41. Uh, but if he's still willing to play football and he's been such a good tackle in the NFL for so long, who knows? He might be serviceable enough, for them. But yeah, I do expect this defensive line to take advantage of the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. There's a couple of things that, again, you look at the tape, you look at what they were doing against the Rams. The Rams were eventually were able to take advantage of that Seattle Seahawks offensive line, especially once Lucas and I believe Cross went down. Um, and as far as being able to send pressure, guys like Aaron Donald being Aaron Donald and just, them sending out stunts, blitzes, and really being able to get to a point where they were able to really rattle Geno Smith. And they didn't give him a ton of like room to work with, both, inside the pocket or outside of the pocket. And so this defensive line, looking at what they were able to do against Patrick Mahomes and doing against, Jawan Taylor, even with him lining up 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, like, I have a lot of faith that Aaron Glenn and this defensive line are going to be able to find a great amount of success. Now, the question becomes in the strategy and the approach that this defense is going to take when going up against Seattle. Because I think the Rams had a good one in terms of coverage and how they chose to, run their coverage schemes against the Seahawks, except for one area. There's one area in particular that was like a head scratcher, which is, the Seahawks occasionally would put DK Metcalf in the slot. And obviously, whenever you put a receiver in the slot, there's a good amount of chance that that slot receiver has an advantage because there's so much space that they have to work with. Well, the Rams on a number of occasions chose to go with like a linebacker opposite of DK, and it was the one head scratcher that I kind of had in terms of some of the decisions they were making defensively. But as far as like typically running like a zone coverage, man here and there, but for the most part, like again, running zone and kind of keeping eyes on Geno, that also made it very hard for Geno to be able to take off and run. So I, for the most part, expect the Lions' defensive game plan to be somewhat similar to that of what they did against the Chiefs, where again, obviously the biggest threat to Patrick Mahomes is his arm, but you also need to be able to have enough eyes on him so that you can be able to, be aware of where he is in the event that he decides to take off and run. Geno didn't do a ton of that against the Rams, but he did do it, I believe, last year, and it really like hurt the Lions on a number of drives where it helped extend drives. I expect the Lions to fix that, so I don't expect there to be a ton of man, but I do expect the Lions, specifically in the run game, I expect them to probably send a few more like run type of blitzes because with a guy like Kenneth Walker, if you're not able to get hands on him early in his route in his running plays, the dude hurts you. And I'm a big K9 fan, obviously being a Michigan State fan. Being able to see Kenneth Walker III at Michigan State for that 1 year was amazing. And you see what he's doing in the NFL, and it's some of the same stuff. Like I said, I'm gonna have a video come out later on Pride of Detroit. There's a couple of plays that I highlight in there where the dude is just unreal. And you kind of look at it through the lens of like, hey, if the defense isn't careful in terms of discipline, right? Not necessarily like, oh, poor tackling, but like understanding responsibilities, understanding that, like, hey, if you have contain, remain in the spot of contain. Don't get caught peeking inside because Kenneth Walker is the type of running back where even when it looks like he's going to get tackled behind the lines, he has enough strength and enough balance to be able to quickly bounce something out. And if you're a linebacker or a defensive end and you've tried to come over the top and you've abandoned your rushing lane, dude is going to make you pay for it. And so, again, I think based off of what's going on with the Seahawks offensive line, I think there's opportunities to take advantage of them in both the running and passing game. But there's definitely some things to also be worried about as well. Shout out to Seabass in the chat saying, "Let's go get another asterisk." Listen, as long as they're all 1-0 or 2-0, I'll take as many asterisks as the league is willing to hand out, as long as the Lions are still being credited with wins and it leads to them getting a playoff spot. That's where I'm at with all of that. And I know a lot of people were bent out of shape about, Tarico saying that. And obviously it's going to be fuel for the fire, right, for the fan base for the rest of the year. But again, there's more to that quote. If you didn't get to see the whole quote, he does give the Lions credit. Like even in that same sentence, he gives the Lions a credit by saying like, "Yo, that this team is for real." So, um, again, I get it. I know we're gonna run for probably a few more weeks, but yeah, I don't actually like I don't have a gripe against Mike Tirico. Shout out to BD Buster in the chat saying, "What's up, man? What's going on, BD? I've been good, man. Like I said, obviously, if you guys watch Pride Detroit, you guys know that I've been putting out content. Put out a video early this morning with Morgan where we did some film study, and it was the first time I've ever done like a film breakdown with anybody. Let alone myself. And so it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I have a video coming out later where I decided to do even more of it. This time specifically on the Seahawks, and just kind of doing a film breakdown of them. Um, but I would love for you guys again. I'm so open to feedback because it's something that I'm looking to get better at as a content creator, right? Being able to not just sit here and give opinions, but also look at film and look at tape and break down what's happening and how I think that impacts our team as they prepare to each and every week for a new opponent. Shout out to Brent saying, "Yo, finally caught you live." Man, it's been a minute. And like I said, if you guys have if anybody's followed this channel for a minute, you guys know how I roll. I try not to just jump on here just for the sake of jumping on here. If I don't feel like I can give you guys good energy, if I don't feel like I can give you guys good takes, I don't always like repeating myself. So sometimes I won't jump on if I feel like all I'm going to do is repeat something that I said in another video. Uh, but I wanted like I said, I felt really good this week. I'm in really good spirits, and so I was like, "Yo, let me jump live. Let me make that a priority." And so yeah, I'm super excited and happy to be here with you guys today. Antoine in the chat saying, "What up, though? What's good with you, Antoine? Appreciate you coming by." Um, Joshua Mercer over on Twitch saying, "You have worries about our run defense in this game." I do. Like I said, we just talked about it, and it's really in terms of how special Kenneth Walker is, and it's all about discipline, right? Um, I think that's something that the Lions did great, honestly, against the Chiefs. The Chiefs didn't run it a ton, but when they did, you never had a person unaccounted for, whether it was like again CJ GJ coming from his safety spot and being able to fill a rushing lane, whether it's guys just understanding their responsibilities, and most importantly, just getting off of blocks. Like that in itself is just so important to being able to have a good run defense. There were times where again, watching the Rams against Kenneth Walker, where it's like, dude, nobody's getting off of blocks. You're not doing a good enough job getting off of blocks. Or even when looking at how the Seahawks were defending the run against the Rams not getting good like leverage and getting good like hand placement on blocks. And so it makes it easier for those runs to get blown up. Um, Again, if you're gonna have like new faces on that offensive line, I think you have a greater chance of like maybe there just being some miscues on the offensive line when it comes to run blocking. And if Aaron Glenn is aggressive enough, and if this defense is sound enough as far as their technique and their responsibilities, I think this defense could really step up. But if they're not, right? Again, if they're too like high on their own supply, right? Because again, they're coming off of a huge win against Casey, huge win. But you still have to be in the moment of understanding what this team can do to you. Just because they lost, 30-13, this is not a pushover Seahawks team. This defense is for real. They have real weapons on offense. DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, Tyler Lockett, JSN, had his moments here and there. That's a solid group of guys offensively, weapon wise. I do think Geno's taken a bit of a step back. I don't think he looked nearly as sharp against the Rams. And there were a number of things like it's not just missing throws, but it's like, you know, at times I think he took it, I think he played it a little too safe where there was like, man, like, yeah, you made that throw, but like you didn't even have pressure and you probably could have made a second or third read for a bigger play that would have put your team in position to score. So um, there's just a couple things when watching Geno where I was like, man, he doesn't look the same like he did last year. He looked way more like he just kind of like let it all hang out when he played. And watching him against the Rams, he looked like he was just way more conservative. Um, And so again, there's no guarantee that that'll be the same Geno we get on Sunday, but it was something that I took notice of when watching the game, or watching the replay and the all 22 of that game. Uh, Max Stack saying, scale of 1 to 10, where does Seattle's D line measure? Ooh, that's a good one. Um, so for me, it's not even just their D line, right? Because they have Jerron Reed on that D line, and Jerron Reed is very, very good. The thing that stood out to me when watching their defense is actually their linebackers. So they returned Bobby Wagner, and Bobby's just fantastic. He's probably, I know, like right now, like Fred Warner is probably like the hot name, right? As far as like best linebacker in the NFL. And he very well could be. Obviously, he's younger and everything like that. Bobby Wagner is playing at a level that is, for me, because my favorite linebacker is Ray Lewis of all time, is very reminiscent of Ray Lewis when he was like, again, nowhere near his prime anymore, but Ray Lewis was still just like, he had absorbed so much football that you were just like, it doesn't matter how old Ray is, he's always going to make plays. That's Bobby Wagner. And so, yeah, the D line is solid. They have a couple pieces here. They, as like I said, Jerron Reed, they have a couple young guys, and they definitely play a part in being able to stop the run and being able to get pressure on the quarterback when necessary. But it's these linebackers. When it's Wagner, it's Jordan Brooks, it's Nwosu, Boye Mafe, who is technically a defensive end, but I think he stands up a lot more as like an outside linebacker. Those guys, those guys got juice. Like there's a number of run plays. I'm gonna keep plugging this video before I even publish it, but like I highlight those guys because they blow up some running plays, and it is insane from a linebacker position. And it's not the same. Like when we went against the Chiefs, Nick Bolton is a really good linebacker. Willie Gay is a really good linebacker, but they didn't look like intimidating as far as like size, structure, and all that. You look at Bobby Wagner, you look at Nwosu, you look at Jordan Brooks, they all just look like tanks. You look at Boye Mafe, like they are built to defend the run. They are built to like put some good hits on you. And again, I'm gonna keep kind of repeating myself on some of these things. Like, don't let that score fool you. That group like had their moments. It was really the passing game that really let them down. And I think that's where the Lions will be able to take advantage. But if I had to put them on a scale of 1 to 10, the D line, I'll say like a 7. That might be a little bit of a safe answer, but I thought they were solid. There weren't many like, again, plays in this game where you see Jerron Reed or any of the defensive linemen necessarily like blowing up a play and getting in Stafford's face. You see some of the corners get in his face because they ran some corner blitzes. Like I said, the linebackers are freakish athletic. You see them kind of just get through the line. Again, partially due to like some poor blocks by the offensive line. There's some poor angles taken by the tight ends, but those linebackers concern me more than like the actual defensive line. Like the linebackers are the thing that like have me kind of just like, that's a tough group to kind of go up against in your second game of the season. Um Brian asking the question, knowing their starting right tackle will be out, do you think Houston will get more playing time? I think so. I think I to be fair, I think James Houston got a good amount of snaps. I don't know off the top of my head. So I'll look that up right now. But I felt like when I was watching the game, I thought James Houston um was, in on a lot of these third downs, especially like again in the third and fourth quarters. I thought he was pretty involved. Um and so it'll be interesting to kind of see. So I guess, all right, so they have him with 16 snaps against the Chiefs. I don't That sounds really, really I mean, no, okay, so he was in on 21 snaps against the Chiefs. Um, Let me figure out if there's a way I can share my screen with you guys, so that you guys can kind of see this for yourselves as well. But um, yeah, so James was in on 21 snaps. Um, Run defense grade wasn't great, right? And that's something that James is still gonna have to kinda continue to work on, but pass rush grade, really good, right? 2 pressures, 1 hit, 1 hurry. I do think, again, like I said, I think Gino kind of stepped back. I don't think he was nearly, um, like I said, just as aggressive as he was last year. And so I think if you can get James Houston in and he's working up against a backup, I think they said like, well, they promoted somebody from the practice squad. I think Seattle did. If you're able to get somebody like that, um, against James Houston, I would take James Houston in that matchup all day. But I think you're also going to get plenty of Charles Harris. Charles Harris is somebody that they trust immensely. Aiden's going to continue to flip back and forth. Josh Pascal. So there's a lot of mouths to feed on that defensive line. But if James Houston gets his opportunities to go up against that backup, I think James Houston is going to feast. Absolutely. Brent saying AG's defense against the champs was a pleasant surprise. He's slowly converting me over, much in the same way Goff did. Listen, there's not there's not enough good things that I can say about AG and the job that that defense did in week 1. I have a lot of respect. It's one of the things that stood out to me the most was like the Lions don't win that game if the defense doesn't play the way they did. They just don't. The offense only put up what was it? 14 points as an offense, and then you obviously get the pick 6 from Brian Branch, so that gives you your 21. Um The defense, though, holding Patrick Mahomes to 20, like, that's what you want from your defense. You should feel fairly confident that if your defense is able to hold opposing offenses to 20, 21 points, you should be able to win that game. Your offense should be able to manufacture 24 to 27 points a game, I think. And I think this offense specifically even more, right? Considering the weapons they have with Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown, Khalif, not to mention even when JMO gets back, like this offense has the potential to be extremely explosive like they were last year. So having a defense and AG being able to make the adjustments, I give him a lot of credit for making those adjustments, specifically the adjustment of playing less man, which was the thing that I think I was the most critical of because they played so much man in the first half of last year that and it was they were getting torched with it. And I know we can sit here and debate whether the talent was good enough, but one thing is for sure, that same talent when put into a zone scheme in the second half of the season played better. And so I give a lot of credit for AG um again being willing to adapt. And they've something that they've always preached about being willing to adapt to their players and what works best and what is going to help set their team and their players up for success. He did that, right? In their game against the Chiefs. He absolutely made the necessary adjustments to put his team in a position to be successful. Miko, do you have any concerns? This is from Perry. Do you have any concerns, any worry or concerns from the Kansas City game? So I have two. I have two that have been fairly consistent with me since that game. The first is something that I just mentioned, which is the offense only put up 14 points. And it was something that like it's not a letdown because I kind of expected that game to be, kind of a nail biter, by a little bit of a nail biter. The thing is, though, I was expecting it to be that way because I just thought Patrick Mahomes would still be able to find success, and so it'd be more of a shootout. And when it wasn't much of a shootout, it was just a matter of like, man, the offense just isn't finding, big enough plays. They weren't getting enough, um, they were finding enough success on third downs. I think they were like what 3 for 7 on third downs or something like that. Or I can't remember if that was the exact number, or I feel like I heard Jeremy kind of say like they were either 3 for 7 on third downs, period, or they were 3 for 7 like when throwing on third down. And that's a tough pill to swallow for your offense because again, looking at the Seahawks matchup, one of the ways that the Rams were able to control the Seahawks and get that win is that they were near perfect on third down, right? I think in the first half at one point in time, like they went on one of their drives, they went like 5 for 5 on third downs. So this offense not being able to convert on third down, specifically throwing the ball, is a bit of a concern for me. That's something that definitely has me worried because if they find, like I said, if the Seahawks defense is strong against the run and you find yourselves in some second and longs and you're not able to get those to third and shorts, you're going to have to throw the ball to pick up these third downs. And so it becomes a question of can and will they be able to do that? Um, Another concern I have, and it's a small one, it's a really, really small one. Um, but we all know about the drops, right? That KC had, and PFF is saying it's only three. Watching the game, it felt like more than three. Um, Maybe there's some of those are drops, some of those are on Patrick Mahomes. Maybe they're saying that he didn't throw a catchable ball. I don't know. Um, but there were a couple plays where when those drops were happening, when those overthrows or underthrows were happening, it's not like they were in like tight coverage. There were a couple of those plays, and it's something that I talked about as far as like with the zone scheme, where occasionally you get guys running through zones, and because of the nature of the defense, like it's easy to kind of get that separation from guys. There were a couple plays that I noticed here and there where it was just like, man, like the corner's in trail position, and if Patrick Mahomes, is able to hit that, or if that receiver is able to catch that, like that's a first down. That's not a that corner isn't in position, isn't in good enough position, in my opinion, to get an easy pass breakup. So again, there's always going to be give and takes with defensive screen schemes, right? I would prefer the Lions to run um, a little more zone than man because again, we especially in this game where you have to deal with mobile quarterbacks, just because the minute quarterbacks realize that nobody's paying attention to them, it just makes it too easy for them to just take off and pick up yardage that way. But there was a couple, snaps here and there where you just saw some separation, guys running through zones, and you're just like, man, like fortunately that's a drop because otherwise that's probably a first down, and we're this drive is extended even further, and Patrick Mahomes is able to probably get into more of a rhythm. Um, David saying last year our defense got blown out, missing Kamish, Pascal, and Houston, right? Not in all of those games, but like, yeah, I mean, obviously down the stretch, down the stretch at the end of the season, more of those guys were available. But yeah, like there were a number of circumstances last year that led to the defense getting exposed as well outside of scheme, right? Yeah, having Pascal, not there for a certain amount of time. Charles Harris went down. Romeo wasn't back for a while. I think Julian Aquara went down. So there were a number of injuries, but there were also like a lot of times it was just like, man, like coverage just wasn't good, right? It was either coverage or guys picking up penalties. Uh, all in all, it's nice to at least for 1 week to be able to see that this defense picked up where they left off because they were playing really good down the stretch. That's one of the things that a lot of people point to when we're talking about the Lions finding success last year is that, like, hey, the defense was playing good down the stretch, and that's what helped them pick up some of those wins. Um, let's see. Perry saying the Lions won a game that they would have lost in a bad way any other year. Gibbs, Laporta, Hutch, CJ, GJ, Branch came to play. Listen, and that's the thing that for me is most encouraging going into this season is that like it's not just you looking at your roster and being like, "Oh, he's good for us." Right? Like I can feel like I can look at this Lions roster and be like, "No, like he would be good on any other team." It's not just that he's on the Lions and it's this coaching staff. Hutch has taken his game up to another level. I know there were some people that kind of like are upset with me because like I do. I think Hutch had a good game. I'm not in the same boat as some people that are like he had an amazing, fantastic game. I thought he had a good game. I think he was fantastic in the when he was rushing from the interior. When you look at that specifically, Hutch was phenomenal. Like whatever the adjective is that I can say to describe how good he was rushing from a three tech position on against a guard, use that adjective. He was that good. On the outside, it was hit or miss. And that's fine. Like that's the nature of it. Jawan Taylor, even if you don't take into factor the cheating, right? Some of the lining up stuff, Jawan Taylor is still like a respectable right tackle in the NFL. And Donovan Smith on the other side is equally a very good and respectable tackle. They have good tackles. So it's not like I expected Hutch to completely dominate them, but he won some and he lost some. And I think there were a couple times, Hutch kind of got in his own head or got, a little antsy and wanting to really, apply pressure or really wanting to get a sack. I think he let some of his technique slip here and there. But for the most part, if I had to grade it out, just like his overall performance, he still gets an A. just not an A plus. He gets an A. Um, but CJ GJ, phenomenal. Again, like living up to the billing. If you've listened or heard me talk about CJ GJ, I've been really high on him as being like an emotional leader, an emotional battery for that defense. And it seems to actually be translating. Obviously, like, we got the whole ski mask thing going. Hopefully you guys were able to get one. If not, sorry about that. Um, I know like we at Questionable Teas we're selling some for a while. We sold out like within like I think with like in less than 24 hours, we sold out of the ones that we were selling. Um, but again, like that's the CJ GJ effect, right? Brian Branch, again, find your favorite adjective and apply it to Brian Branch. Jameer Gibbs, all I can say is more. Like that's all I want from Jameer Gibbs is more. More snaps, more opportunities, more the ball in his hand more. That's all I can say when it comes to Jameer Gibbs. And you can kind of just keep going on and on. Laporta had some really good, again, just making himself available and picking up, again, yards after the catch, which is something that he did really well in college. So I feel really good about the talent overall. And I think we all do, right? We all feel really good about the talent that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have been able to acquire. Josh was saying, yeah, I asked that right before you went into Kenneth Walker talk. I was thinking the same thing. We need to get them to second and third and longs in this game to take advantage of Lucas being out. Absolutely, right? If you're able to get this Seattle offense into some third and longs, not even necessarily long, like even like third and 8, third and 7 type of stuff, um, I think you can have more opportunities. Now, it's important to keep in mind Kenneth Walker is a complete back in my mind, right? And what I mean by that is that he can obviously run the ball very well, but he can also be a threat in the passing game. There's a route that he ran in this Seattle, in the Seahawks Rams game, and it's not for a ton of yards, but it's again, you see him make this catch, and it's what he does after the catch where you're just like, man, let's not let the ball get in this guy's hand, right? Like it's that simple. Like if we can limit we can't limit him like getting, rushing attempts. We have to be able to at least limit what he is able to get in the passing game because if he's able to expose us in both, like yeah, you're in trouble as a defense. Uh Shout out to my guy Det Fan Man saying, "Hey peoples, are we thinking blue ski mask really going to be a thing?" I was shocked. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like, and I know it. Like, Lions fans, we are so passionate, and I love that about our fan base. Right, we are so passionate, and if it makes sense and it's something that, especially being driven by a player, we tend to jump on fairly quickly. I was shocked that like ski masks went crazy like they did. Like the fact that Amazon sold out. Like I said, us at Questionable Tees, we have like a decorated one that has villain on the back that we kind of mocked up and are going to be selling to people. Like we sold out of the ones we had. It's it's dope and it's exciting to see again the fan base rally around the team and just about anything. So I really can't wait. It sounds like it's going to be a thing. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind if any of you bought one, from what I've heard, you cannot wear it like walking into the stadium. Like you have to like basically like you can have it, but you can't like they're not going to let you in if you're wearing it. So like once you get in, then you can put it on and then do the right thing. That's all I'll say. Just do the right thing. BD Buster saying the crowd will play a big factor too. I I'm so excited to see how that translates. Like obviously I won't be at the game, but like I want to see like how that translates through the TV because I remember I'm sure most of you do too when the Lions played like the Giants on Monday Night Football. And it was like the first time the Lions had been on Monday Night Football in a long time, and like you could feel the energy through the TV. Like it was just that loud. And it screwed up the Giants. And when Ford Field has been rocking, it does. It puts a lot of pressure on these offenses. So I expect for those of you that are going, if anybody in the chat is going to the game on Sunday, I expect that place to be just amazing. Absolutely amazing. Perry asked the question, who do you think will be our MVP this year, the Sun God or CJ GJ? So it depends, right? Let's do I have to just pick one MVP for the team? If I have to pick one MVP for the entire team, my vote will be CJ GJ. It just will be because I think I'm a sucker for like vocal, strong leaders. I think every team, like the successful teams, you can typically find one. There's some type of emotional leader too. They're not just the best player on the team. They also rally everyone around them. In football, like I said, like Ray Lewis was my guy. And he wasn't just a great linebacker, right? Like he found ways to this day. You can find clips of his speeches on YouTube or wherever, and it'll make you want to go run through a wall. Like he helped elevate and galvanize that entire, not just that defense, that entire team. That entire team had a Ray Lewis mentality. You look at Tom Brady, again, we can sit here and debate, and people do. They debate his physical talent, but his mentality, his energy, his approach to the game was infectious, where everyone knew, like, yo, Tom's gonna bring it. And so if Tom's gonna bring it, I gotta bring it. I think CJ GJ is obviously not quite that level, but I think what he's bringing and the way he's talking and carrying himself has a similar effect where it's like, I think one of his quotes early on was like, yo, I practice how I play. And that sounds so simple, but again, it kind of again puts this mentality into your teammates. Yo, don't come in here and lollygag. Don't come in here and just go through the motions. You better come in here and act as if we are getting ready to play a game each and every time you come in here to practice. And that mentality, I think, is contagious. I think it starts to resonate throughout the entire team, both offensively and defensively, where everybody is on the same page of like, yo, we got to be ready to go. Love Amon Ra. Love him. I think again, if we're talking best offensive player this year, yes. If we're talking MVP of the team, for me, that's just for me though. Let's see what else we got. I know I'm lagging behind in comments, guys. I apologize. Um, I'm talking. I don't know. Is there such thing as talking too much when you're having a podcast? I feel like I'm talking too much, and maybe I'm spending too much time on some of these questions, and maybe I should give you guys just more simplistic answers. Uh, Dr. Paparoni saying, "I will be at the game with with the ski mask, so I hope so." Um, Again, I think it's a dope thing. I think it's something that's awesome that the fans are rallying behind. Perry asking the question, "Do you think the Rams upset the Seahawks or the Rams caught them on an off night?" Um, I don't think either. I think the Rams were just better. Like, I do think there were things that the Seahawks could have done. Like, absolutely. I think Geno being more aggressive offensively could have helped. But I also think like Matthew Stafford was just in his bag. Like some of the throws he was making, even some of the ones that were incomplete, you're just like, yo, like that's he's healthy. Like that's I think that's the takeaway that you end up coming away with in that game. Is like, yo, Matthew's healthy. And you put him behind an offensive line that gives him time because he wasn't being hit a ton. I don't think he was sacked at all in that game. You put him in a situation where he's not getting touched and he's able to just deal, dude, he can carve up anybody. And so defensively, I don't know if there's much more the Seahawks could have done. They had shut down the run game. I just don't think they got a big lift from their offense, really, especially in the second half. Like first half, it was very competitive. Second half, things got away from the Seahawks quickly. Um, David asking the question, do you hope Bugs is activated to stop the run? So originally I did. I ain't gonna even hold. I mean, I'm gonna hold you up, David. I thought I was like, you know what, this would be a perfect game for Bucks. Then I watched the tape, and you see how the Seahawks run Kenneth Walker. It's not a lot of like stuff up the middle, and I think that's where um, Isaiah Bugs would be the best. They do a lot more like outside zone, outside type stretch plays, a couple tosses here and there. And so I think you need athleticism in your defensive line. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bugs was inactive for this game as well. And they once again went with the same tandem of, Benito Jones, Levi, and then utilize Pascal and Kaminsky and Aiden at the three tech spot and just put more athletes on that defensive line. Because like I said, Kenneth Walker is capable of bouncing. And if he's able to bounce something outside, you're going to want athletes on that defensive line. Um, Perry asking the question, is Decker out with an injury? So he didn't practice today. He hasn't been ruled out for the game. I think they're still going to they're going to go through the rest of practice. and see how he feels. He played all of that game with that ankle injury. Um, and so I think it's really just going to depend. I think they have like 2 more days of practice. I think we'll have to see just like how he feels, right? I think it wouldn't surprise me if he's a game time decision. So it's something that we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on in that regard. Uh, David saying Houston was primarily facing their cheating right tackle, right? No, actually they flipped. Like Houston actually played on both sides of the line. So he had a couple, yeah, he had some against Jawan Taylor, he had some against Donovan Smith. He got a good dose against both. I think the one where he got Patrick Mahomes around the ankle, um, I think that was against Donovan Smith actually. So yeah, they moved him around. They moved all of those guys around a lot. I think Charles Harris didn't get as many opportunities against Jawan Taylor. I think they typically kept him on one side. But Houston and I know Hutch, they rotated quite a bit. Perry saying AG got talent to work with now. The secondary may be our strongest unit on defense. It's hard to argue, right? It's that or edge. I think it's either the secondary or edge, and it's close. It's really, really close between those two groups, in my opinion. Um, Brent saying, I see Gibbs getting over 100 yards from scrimmage easily against the Sea Chickens. Could be, right? I think the one thing that, like, again, watching that Rams game and trying to just recall it, I don't think they utilized their running backs a ton in the passing game. Um, and that's something that the Lions can do differently, right? Obviously, with Gibbs being able to line up out wide or in the slot, or again, just being able to catch passes out of the backfield. Um, I think the Seahawks are going to have so much to deal with. And then you talk about again, well, I guess the noise won't impact the defense nearly as much because obviously the offense needs to communicate. But hostile environment, there's a lot of things that you could put together that may disrupt uh, the Seahawks defense. Shout out to Jay Mommy in the chat saying it was the first game that their starters played. On offense, they know what needs to be addressed. To hold Mahomes under 230 passing and 6 points in the second half, how often does it happen? And it doesn't. And that's one of the reasons why I do. I give a lot of credit to Aaron Glenn, and I give a lot of credit to this defense being able to step up and show drastic improvement because Patrick Mahomes is that kind of guy. Just like how I was talking about what Stafford did against the Seahawks, where he didn't have his number one guy, but he still found success. That's the feeling that at least I still had with Patrick Mahomes against the Lions until I saw it happen. Like I was just like, oh no, Patrick Mahomes can make anybody look good. And I don't know, maybe if Kadarius Tony's hands weren't made out of bricks, maybe he would have. But like that also is still like that defensive line was still putting pressure. You still got an amazing play from Brian Branch. That's not just luck either. Like that's Brian Branch understanding where to be on the field. Again, Morgan and I broke down that play. Like it's not just like, oh, that got tipped. And so that's how Brian, like, no, Brian has to be in the right position. And even if he didn't get that tip, like that tip pass, he was in prime position to be able to still break up that reception or at least keep it from being a first down. Again, luck is one of those things where it's like I say, it's one of those things where preparation meets talent or preparation meets like opportunity. That's what happened in that situation. So a lot of credit to that defense. Shout out to my guy Brent, reminding you guys we have well at the time I guess we had 19 people watching. Now have 22 people watching. Um, and nobody's hitting the like button. Come on, guys, give me a little bit of love, at least a little bit, just to hit the like button, just to say hi, just to let me know that you guys, at least missed me a little bit. Shout out to Tim in the chat saying, "What up, though? What's good with you, Tim? Glad that you were able to make it by the stream. Hopefully, you're still here hanging out." Uh, Public Enemy saying, "I'm not worried about the offense. The first game was something like their first preseason game to get rid of the rust, but better because it's the real deal." And I agree. Like I listen, I'm not like it's not like a hammering the panic button like they're not going to be good the rest of the season, but uh you definitely want to see that group again just have a little more cohesion. Being able to convert on third downs is a big one. Um so yeah, I again not hitting the panic button, but again would love to see that group just be clicking on all cylinders a little bit more. And part of that is kind of going into what David's saying, which is what are the odds of seeing Gibbs getting 15 touches as halfback, and a few at wide receiver? I don't know. I mean, I think Dan Campbell said that's the easy way I can say it. I don't know, but Dan Campbell did say that he'd be getting more, right? I think in that game against the Chiefs, I believe Gibbs had 9 touches altogether. So again, 9 to 15, like that's a few more. And I think those are easy to find. I don't think it's a big leap. I don't think they would have to do anything overly drastic to be able to get him that many touches. They ran David Montgomery a ton, and I don't want to say too much, but they ran him a ton, and I think you could have given some of those carries to Jameer, especially considering like how explosive and how dynamic he was being in the run game at that time. So yeah, I think it's a possibility. How high? I mean, it's going to depend on the flow of the game. Absolutely. Um, Do you think we set the noise record at Ford Field on Sunday? We better. I guess that's the best way of saying it, right? Like I think the way like the excitement has been building up around this city, like it feels like that should just be a deafening experience. Um, so yeah, obviously that's that's going to be dependent on again how the game goes. If the Lions are being successful or they're putting up points, that place is just gonna get louder and louder and louder. Uh if the Seahawks find success, it's gonna be quieter, quieter, and quieter. So yeah, it's all about again how that translates to success. David Lunch in the chat saying worried and going to lose my voice Sunday. Worried I'm going to lose my voice Sunday before the job interview I have on Monday. I think you should be able to take in a doctor's note and be able to say like, "Hey, I was present when the Lions went to 2-0 on the season and completely beat the crap out of the Seahawks." Like just write it on a piece of paper everything I just said, and I think that should automatically get you the job, right? I think the fact that you don't have a voice going to the job interview should show them how committed you are to the things that you're passionate about. That's how you spin it, Dave. That's how you spin it so that they're like, "You know what? We need David on staff, right? He's passionate. He's willing to lay it all on the line, so much so that he's willing to give up his voice. That's how you get. That's how you lock up a job interview. Um, let's see what else we got here in the chat, guys. Um, David saying last year our defense against Seattle was vastly different. We were missing Pascal, Kaminsky, Houston. Now we've added rookies and some free agents. So yeah, it's a different team, right? Like there's no way that you can just be like, oh, well, this is what happened. Like anyone that's saying that immediately tune them out. I think that's a good way of just like handling that. But anybody that's like, well, they didn't do this last year, and this is why it's going to be somewhat similar, isn't taking into account the new pieces, the momentum. Like there's a lot of different things. And like I said, I think Gino looks different. Like not even just like with the Lions look different. Gino looked different. Like did not look as crisp. Did not look like I don't want to say like he's coasting, but he just looked like he wasn't willing to take gambles at times. And I felt like last year he was willing to do that. I feel like he was much more gutsy with some of his throws and some of his, progressions through his offense. Um, and Josh was saying, I feel like that's the point of the podcast in regards to like the question I asked about, am I taking too long? Glad you feel that way. Public Enemy saying Matthew Stafford didn't have a touchdown, so how deep in his bag was he really? Deep enough to take two guys who have never really done much of anything and put them over 100 yards. And the fact that they decided to run the ball for touchdowns instead of throw them. So that's how. Putting his team in position to score points, because obviously they don't get 30 points if 9 isn't putting them in scoring position. That's how deep. And yeah, Joshua Mercer actually, this is something. So again, while the run defense for the Seattle was really good, like outside of the red zone, it got really sketchy inside the red zone. Like, and I don't even think it was just the defense. I mean, it's possible that they were tired, right? Because the Rams went on some long drives, but they started getting pushed out of the way fairly easily once the Lions, got into the red zone. And you started seeing those Rams offensive linemen being able to get more flush blocks and open up lanes, and Kyron Williams was easily taking those touchdowns. So Makes me feel good if you're a David Montgomery, owner in fantasy football, might be worth starting him. Just saying. Um, Joshua Mercy asking, is it true the Seahawks are considering putting Jamal Adams at linebacker? I feel like he would be a problem there. My question is, who do you take off the field? Because like I said earlier, like I think they have some solid linebackers across the board right now. And Jamal Adams has had like the hardest time staying healthy. Um, yeah, he's had the hardest time staying healthy just naturally. So I don't like the idea of bumping somebody else out that's playing well just for the sake of Jamal Adams. If you want to like throw him in other on certain packages, then sure. But I think Seattle has a nice collection of I think they have a nice collection of linebackers. Perry asking, do you think Travis Kelsey would have changed the game in Casey's favor? Yeah. Yeah, I do. And it's just like, and it's not as simple as just saying, like, oh, Travis Kelsey is the best tight end. And so therefore the game is different. There was something that I don't know if any of you guys picked it up on. I can't remember who specifically said it, whether it was Tarico or Collinsworth, but someone mentioned how one like underrated aspect of Travis Kelsey's game is he is one of the few players that I know of that I can like that I've heard this said about where he'll go into huddles and he'll come up with his own audibles for his own route. So like if anybody's ever played like Madden, like how I used to be able to like hot route certain routes and being able to change it. I've heard that like Travis Kelsey does that. Like through the course of a game, when he starts to get like a sense of like, okay, this is how they're covering me, and this is how I can beat that. He'll go into huddles, the play's called, and he'll talk to Patrick and be like, hey, I'm gonna run this and I'm gonna be open. That's an element of the game that's very hard to game plan because at that point in time, the offensive player has analyzed what the defense is doing, and he feels like, you know what, I know who I'm being matched up against, and I know what type of route combinations are going to get me open. And that's one of the things that makes Travis Kelsey one of the best in the game. It's not just as simple to be like, oh, yeah, he would have been there. So therefore, the game would probably have been different. It's what Travis Kelsey actually does on the field and through the course of a game um, that makes him so special. And so, like, yeah, I think it would have made it a little more difficult. Um, let's see what else we got here. Def Fan Man saying, so the Lions had the 32nd pass rush win rate and the 31st run stop win rate, but it looked like we dominated the line. Hutch pressured all day, and Mahomes was the only producing running back. What am I missing? Stats are weird. That numbers sometimes lie. Yeah, I can't tell you because I also don't think like we gave up a ton of yards. And pass rush win rate I might be a little subjective, right? Depending on what is considered a win. Um, and possibly the fact that, like, again, the Ram or the Chiefs didn't run it a ton. So maybe that kept like the win rate kind of low. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Like maybe there's, sometimes with stats, you need a specific uh number to even qualify for a specific stat or it kind of pulls you down. But yeah, I couldn't tell you. If you let me know where you got those from, I would love to know. Because if it's PFF, then I'm gonna immediately have an answer for you on what to do with those numbers. Um, Dark Elf saying, "Hey, Miko, love the show. Appreciate it, Dark. Thank you for coming by. Thanks for checking us out. I'm not gonna be around here too much longer. It's been an hour, um, but I've had a good time with you guys. It's been funny being able to get back in touch with everyone and being able to talk again a little more freely. Uh, could the Seahawks coaching staff be holding Smith back? Possibly, right? I think like there's always the possibility that a coaching staff could be holding him back, or again, um, just wanting to be safe with the football, right? And again, like taking what's given to you. Uh, like I said, I felt like when watching that game, I thought early in that game, especially, even in parts of the third quarter, I thought Gino had plenty of time to go through progressions. Yeah, he got pressured a couple times. Um, where like a free runners here and there, and that's understandable that like obviously that play gets blown up. But there were a couple where it's like yo, like I get that that might be your first read and that person might be opened, but so is the like your second read or who I think is your second read. Like that person's wide open. There was a specific play in the first half where I believe it was like they did like a reverse and I think DJ Dallas took the snap. He pitched it to Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett pitched it to Geno. And I think Geno was so keyed in on DK Metcalf, he missed Jake Bobo streaking down the field like wide open. So like that's not necessarily coaching. That's like, hey, you didn't go through your progression to be able to see like that dude is wide open. And so those little things right there um kind of limit, the success of the offense in that regard. Um Public Enemy saying by that logic, Golf was really in his bag last season because Jamal Williams had 17 more touchdowns, mostly red zone. If you give Golf half of those, he was close to 40 touchdowns. And he could have been, right? I don't sit here. I think when talking about Jared Goff's success last year, like, yeah, you have to be able to say, you looking at like the numbers and the stats that Jared Goff put up, I think it's very fair to say that Jared Goff was in his bag. I think if you only look at touchdowns and saying, well, like, hey, how many touchdowns did a quarterback put up? Yeah, that doesn't necessarily dictate how in their bag they were. I think the fact that Jared Goff put his team in position to get touchdowns, I think the fact that he didn't turn over the ball a ton, um, yeah. And I think there's only a few. There are examples where I feel like Jared Goff wasn't in his bag, and even though the Lions won, I think the Giants game is a good one. I think the Green Bay game is another one where like Jared Goff threw some touchdowns because he threw them in the red zone, but I was still like, yeah, but your defense is giving you a lot of those opportunities. So again, I think like, yeah, it's subjective in terms of like, again, what you want to say a quarterback being in their bag. But yeah, also as simple as just turning on the tape and you can kind of just see like based on how a quarterback or a player is performing throughout a game, um, how in the zone they may be in that moment. Um, Last question I'll give here. Brent saying, Gibbs unleashed. When does Gibbs break out? Thanksgiving is my prediction. National TV, Lions should have enough game time reps by then, and hopefully Gibbs gets 20 plus touches. I don't accept that, Brent. I don't accept that. Jahmyr Gibbs breaks out this Sunday. I'm gonna say Jahmyr Gibbs breaks out against the Seahawks. I saw enough from Jahmyr Gibbs against the Chiefs where I was like, it's because it wasn't just speed, right? Like all off season throughout the draft process, all we heard was like, hey, he's speedy, he's a great receiver, this, that, and the other. And then he showed power. Like he showed the ability to break tackles. I think Jahmyr Gibbs currently is leading the NFL in broken tackles. Like that's something that I'm just not expecting. And I think the Lions, I think Dan Campbell even said it like, hey, they wanted to kind of get him a taste of what it's like to be in the NFL. But now that he's done that, now that he's, got his feet wet, now that he kind of understands what the workload is like, I expect him to get a few more touches. I hope it's not Thanksgiving though. I'm joking with you. I really just don't hope it's Thanksgiving. That's a long time to wait. Um, I'll do this last one from Brian. How many sacks do you think the Lions defense will have Sunday? I'm gonna say 5. I'm gonna say 5 sacks. I think Aiden gets 2. I think Houston will get 1, and I will give another one to. I'm gonna give it to Pascal. I'm gonna give 1 to Pascal. So I think those will be your sack getters this Sunday. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. I appreciate you guys all hanging out. Like I said, I got a video I need to edit for POD. You guys are gonna. I hope you guys are gonna love it. Like I said, it's a little more of a film breakdown. It is Seahawks focused, but again, in the context of me breaking down what they do well, what they don't do well, and how that may impact Sunday's game. But again, appreciate you guys coming by. I appreciate you all, still tuning in, staying subscribed. Um, Again, the goal is to trying to put a more of a focus on being here at least once a week, if not twice a week, like I used to. So again, we'll try to get back to that cadence. Again, starting next week, and at the very least, I will at least do a stream on Monday, right? I'll at least do a stream on Monday to kind of recap the Lions going 2-0, because I'm going to call it now that the Lions will be 2-0 come Monday. So again, thank you guys. Appreciate you all for hanging out. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.